Welcome, everyone. I'm Kara Griffith, the President and CEO of Tax Analysts. Thank you for joining us today for our discussion on artificial intelligence and the future of tax. In every industry in our economy, people want to learn what AI and even generative tools like ChatGPT can do. But closer to home, we want to know what impact these new technologies will have on the legal, tax, and accounting industries. We're delighted that you're with us today as we explore this very, very important issue. Today's event is another in Tax Analyst series of public discussions that we call Taxing Issues. We launched this series as another way for tax analysts to encourage debate on tax issues. We've been bringing the tax community together with leading policymakers and experts for bipartisan discussions on the future of tax policy and administration. As always, we welcome your feedback on how we can make our webinars more useful, as well as your suggestions on future webinar topics. You can send your feedback and suggestions to events@taxanalyst.org. For those of you that would like CPE credit today, please be sure you participate in the program for at least 50 minutes and answer at least 3 of the poll questions. Those will appear throughout the webinar. They're going to appear on the right side of the viewing window above the comment section. To receive credit for your answers, you need to register with Pigeonhole, our interactive Q&A system, by providing your name and email. Also, please remain in the default viewing window because you won't be able to see the questions if you expand the program to the full screen. The course materials, which were sent out in advance, are also available for download under the viewing window. And one last housekeeping item. We welcome your questions for today's event. Please use the chat feature to submit questions during the webinar. For our panel discussion, I'll begin by asking a few questions, and then we'll turn to questions from you, our audience, and I promise to get to as many of them as time permits. Now, AI. Needless to say, it's the new big thing. It's having a major impact on businesses, nonprofits, and other sectors of our economy. In the legal, tax, and accounting space, its ability to provide automated services is raising serious concern, if not some trepidation. As we all know, tax preparation is one thing, but real-time insights and personalized advice is quite another. On the upside, AI can provide a host of benefits. It can strengthen data analysis and forecasting. Practitioners can use it to better stay abreast of new regulations, dig through financial data, and even spot outlier transactions. It can perform what were once manual tasks, which reduces human error and frees up practitioners to do more sophisticated work. At the same time, AI can enable practitioners to provide better, more targeted advice to their clients. The tax, accounting, and law firms are jumping on board. Recently, PwC announced a global partnership with Harvey, an AI startup, to give PwC's legal business solutions professionals access to Harvey's AI platform. Harvey is built on OpenAI and ChatGPT technology, which is powered by a generative AI tool. ChatGPT has attracted a lot of attention lately because it can understand human language prompts and produce human-like dialogue and content. Generative AI is a unique type of AI that can produce novel content. In other words, it doesn't just spit out the information that it finds in a database. It actually generates new content. In a legal setting, Harvey uses natural language processing, machine learning, and data analytics to automate and enhance certain aspects of legal work. PwC hopes Harvey will generate insights and recommendations from large volumes of data. This will give PwC's professionals better information and enable them to find better solutions faster. Now, don't get nervous. The firm has assured everyone that an actual human being will oversee the process and review all of the outputs. But PwC is far from alone. Allen & Overy, which is a London-based law firm, is also partnering with Harvey. And before doing so, they experimented with it. Allen & Overy wanted to know if its lawyers would use Harvey to answer simple legal questions, draft documents, or even write messages to clients. The answer was a resounding yes. Harvey says 25% of Allen & Overy's lawyers are using the tool every day, and 80% are using it every month. Now, KPMG has also announced that it will incorporate AI technology into its global audit platform through a collaboration with MindBridge Analytics. Auditors at that firm will be able to use embedded audit intelligence tools, visualize analytics, and other tools to perform risk analysis and assessment. Now, the list is going to continue to grow, and it will include government agencies as well. But for how long will AI take hold in the legal and tax arenas? It's undeniably an impressive tool and has great potential to automate tasks and free up time. But it's not foolproof. It also tends to, and I'm going to quote here, hallucinate. That is, it makes things up. Can and should lawyers or tax professionals provide advice based on a technology that's not foolproof? Can legal and tax professionals provide enough guardrails around AI to make it a valuable addition to their practice? Can AI improve tax administration? Well, we have a terrific panel today to discuss these issues and many more. First, we have Sharda Sharu, a retired partner from EY, an independent board member, startup mentor, and digital transformation leader. I'm also happy to note that she is a member of the Tax Analyst Board of Directors. Next, we have Caitlin Tharp, an associate at Steptoe & Johnson, who writes and speaks very frequently about the intersection of tax and new technologies. And we have Mindy Hertzfeld, a professor at the University of Florida Levin School of Law, who is also teaching a class on AI and tax. She is also of counsel for the taxation, mergers, and acquisitions practice at Potomac Law Group. Welcome to you all, and thank you so much for joining us. So let's dive right in. Mindy, I want to start with you. You're teaching a class on AI and tax. So I was hoping that you could provide us with a little background of the types of AI tools that are being used in the legal and tax setting.
Sure. Thank you, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here today. So when we think about the different kinds of tools, that was a great introduction to AI and generative AI. I think one important thing to think about is that there's no sharp line between am I going to use AI or am I not? Like everyone is practicing, and anyone who goes about their daily lives, really, if they're using a smartphone, a computer, is already incorporating AI into their practice, into how they do research, how they advise clients. And so the question is, at this moment, really just how far are you going to go? How do you want to be at the forefront of utilizing these tools in your practice with your colleagues, or do you want to hang back and wait and see until some tools have wider adoption? And then the other big question is that you alluded to is what kind of guardrails do you want to put around these new tools? Because as they're becoming more common and as their capacity and capabilities become way exponentially more advanced, the challenges that arise become clearer. So sorry, to answer your question, I've tried to expose my students to a number of the different types of tools. So there's one really whole industry called legal tech that tax people are not don't necessarily utilize every day, and that's because it's so legal tech has been incorporating AI into legal practice, helping law firms and corporations use AI, and they're using AI to process large amounts of data and document to go through documents for due diligence purposes. To review contracts for certain terms, to review contracts for expiration dates. And so they'll take massive amounts of documents, comb through looking for specific terms. And that's really useful to types of litigation practices, corporate M&A practices. Less useful for tax people because we tend to be very fact specific and don't go through the types of documents that much. So they can also be used for drafting, to provide initial drafts of documents. So you could say, well, I've got an entire database of merger documents. Find me a good one to start with these facts, and then produce an initial template. So that's the kind of stuff legal tech is doing. It's not clear, I think, sitting here today, how those tools are easily adaptable to tax. But I think it's only a matter of time coming. And then the second, another type of tool we've worked with is BlueJay Legal that I think you've had on before, and that's more of a research tool. So there they have this, they've got a huge database of tax authorities, and they have trained that database. They've worked with that large amounts of tax data to be able to answer certain types of questions. So they pose questions to the user, and the user responds to those questions, and then they provide an answer to you. So on these facts, we think your answer, a judge is likely to rule in this manner X% of the time. And so that's a different type of AI, but also one being used. This year in our course, we incorporated for the first time ChatGPT. And so we used that to compare our answers that we were getting from these kinds of tools, or from the students' own knowledge, to the answers that ChatGPT provided. And I'll say that that was a challenge. ChatGPT did not necessarily, so we were working with an exercise, what is this financial instrument debt or equity? And ChatGPT, in response to the question, is this debt or equity, gave a very nice answer about what that debt is good to have for tax purposes because interest is tax deductible, but didn't necessarily do a good job of giving the distinction between debt and equity. But also the students that push further were able to get ChatGPT to provide an answer that looked at the distinguishing factors between a debt instrument and an equity instrument. I'll say there that gets us into the challenges there, because as you noted with the hallucination point, ChatGPT, generative AI, is not necessarily trained to distinguish between good and bad answers. And so whether you can trust the answers that ChatGPT is providing, as opposed to, say, a proprietary program like BlueJ, I think is practitioners need to be wary about. So I'll stop there. I can talk about my class for a long time, but I'll let others speak.
I mean, that's really interesting, and what a useful test case. Sharda, I want to turn to you. You are one of the most forward-looking people that I know, who is always looking for innovative solutions to problems. What are your thoughts on AI, and how can it be best used by tax professionals?
Thank you, Kara. So, I just want to step back a bit. It's amazing how fast the whole field is moving and how quickly things are moving. And just adding color to some of the points you'd made, Kara, I just want to go back to something that struck me as I've been listening to Geoffrey Hinton, who's the godfather of AI, who left Google recently. He said a couple of things that have been just rolling around, which sort of made so much sense, right? The 2 points he made is, one, the algorithm that we have in these computer models, AI computer models, have a better learning algorithm than human beings do. And he explained that I'll walk through just quickly why he said that, because that's really important in terms of their algorithms are better. And 2, the other point the other thing he said is, which I really didn't know, is the nodes in our brain. We have apparently 100 trillion nodes in the human brain, versus these computer models have 1 trillion nodes. So we have 100x number of nodes which promote the learning in a human brain. So, but yet something like a ChatGPT has 1,000 more times data that in one model than one human being has, right? So they are computer models are much more effective in storing and accumulating knowledge, despite the fact they only have 1 trillion learning nodes compared to 100 trillion that we have. But what's very interesting, and this, it's obvious when he explained it, but what he said is, human brains are not identical. We all know that. So what doesn't get translated to me instantly. We learn differently. We have different configurations. all these models have been configured the same way. There's OpenAI. And so the exchange of information, so even if you have a computer that's sitting in Timbuktu that is getting unique data, that's learning from it, that unique data and that unique learning is transferred to all the gazillion models that exist instantly, right? So you could see the transference that happens through computer models is so much more effective than human transference. What Mindy knows for 100 years, I would never even be able to know or get to know, right? So that's the basic concept, which is what makes it alarming in some ways, but can be very effective. When we step back and look at tax practices, I spent close to 4 decades at EY, most of it in tax. As tax practitioners, what's very interesting, it's all about data. If you look at computer models, if you look at everything, it's all about data. If you can't feed the model any data, it's just not going to generate anything, right? And if you look at what typically happens in a general tax practice, again, these are generalities, they're always specifics, 50 to 70% of the time, a tax practitioner, whether it's for planning, whether it's for compliance, whether it's for all kinds of things, is gathering, cleaning, and inputting data. So you think about it, 50 to 70% of the time, that's what's happening, right? And 30% of the times is we as tax practitioners, we're analyzing it, again, generalities, analyzing the data, thinking about what it is, adding our context, and then working on the planning ideas around it. So going back to your question, what we focused on about 2015, we embarked on a huge bottoms-up project, basically for automation, allowing for AI. We used early tools like robotic process automation tools, et cetera. And we started focusing on the 50 to 70%, because that's sort of, you can't get stuff digitized, if you can't get the data, if you can't get that, if it's all sitting on individual brains and it's not out there digitized, you aren't able to do a thing. And what we discovered, which was fascinating, and in our first project, this was back in 2015, and it's evolved significantly from there. I spent time in probably about 200 or so tax departments around mostly the United States in looking at how things were being done and how we could think about AI, how we could think about automation, how we could think about digitization. But we started with eating our own medicine first. So we went to our shared services and we said, let's start with, we took 7 practices, but one of them was our sales and use tax practice. And we took a person who'd done this stuff for decades, right? We taped her in terms of how she completed a sales and use tax return, what she did. But we focused mostly, we didn't focus on end-to-end stuff. We focused on like 80% of where the time was spent. She took about 90 minutes, and she'd done this for decades to sort of complete this thing that she did. We recorded her. And then we took a bot, and with mostly robotic process automation, which was just a lot simpler. There wasn't as much machine learning, but we got into, in property taxes stuff, we got into machine learning in other sort of higher forms. The bot basically did it in 3.5 minutes, right? So what she did in 90 minutes, the bot did in 3.5 minutes. And we concluded very quickly that we did this thing 37,000 times a month. We had 37,000 filings a month, and 90 minutes down to 3.5 minutes is what we focused on that chunk. That's where we started in 2015. And over time, what we realized is there's just so much more. So for example, we got into things like, when you're putting information in, there's errors, et cetera. So we basically used machine learning algorithms to detect anomalies, errors, things that were out of the way, to start basically sorting it out so that we could sort of be smarter analyzers. So just going back, literally, we found, whether it was corporate taxes, whether it was any kind of indirect tax, we went into about 14 of our individual sub-service line tax practices, and pretty much found that just there was low-hanging fruit, close to 30% of the stuff could be automated right away without anything, without going very without high flying stuff. But that's where we started. Today, just like the other firms, at EY, they're exploring how you could use ChatGPT like verticalized models. See, well, I think the future of a lot of these generative AI models is going to be, specialized knowledge that's verticalized, where you have data in sort of, I'd say, a silo where it's cleaned, refreshed, there's privacy, and yet you're going out to open AI models. That's sort of, and it's computing wise, you need a lot less power. It's a lot more efficient, and between all the privacy rules and all the stuff that has to be done. So that's sort of what I'm sure the other firms are all doing. Is that's sort of the future of how I think we will see tax and AI evolve, is these verticalized models based upon specialized, subspecialized, whether it's a transfer pricing verticalized model, whether it's a sales and use tax verticalized model, where you're getting the power of that focus in AI. And I'll stop there. I could go on and on, but I think there's huge potential here. What we saw in 2015, 2016, and how we could easily remove 30% of our work through basic stuff, focusing on the 70%. That was wonderful.
It's impressive. I mean, it really, really is impressive. And when you think about that it's going back far enough that this isn't such a moment in time leap that we've been making, and that there's been a lot of this going on in the background that has led up to sort of where we are today. And whether we get to take the leap is yet to be seen to something greater. It's not quite as abrupt as maybe it appears because of ChatGPT coming out in the news and making big headlines. Well, Caitlin, I'm sorry, Mindy, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to add something on the point about 70% easily automated, about 30% maybe needs people. So one of the exercises I do with the students in my course was have them answer the questions that this algorithm posed to get to an answer. Is this financial instrument more like debt or equity for tax purposes? And the answer, so you would think they've all got the same set of facts, right? Just a couple of pages. And they're being asked the exact same questions. You would think their answers would be in a pretty narrow band. Instead, they're all over the place, right? So that whatever the human factor is in that whole big picture is a really crucial point, and that's something that students realize in the course during the course, that the answers the computer provides is only as good as their ability, one, to go through the facts, to properly understand the facts, and then to properly understand the questions that are being asked and provide the answers. And so the automation, of course, that is of enormous potential, but we shouldn't discount the very important role of the human learning and knowledge as applied to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's still a sense of you still have that old garbage in, garbage out concept, that if you're working with bad information that's going in, you can't necessarily trust what's coming out.
I mean, the point also, Mindy, you're making a huge point. The reality is, in real life too, the human variations are huge, right? So you could give the same facts to 10 people and get 10 different answers. And that's what we've actually found in the tax practice. So what we ended up doing is, once we sort of gave the facts, we then started figuring out what are the best of the best. So what are the nuggets from each that are the best that we could incorporate in better than the best, right? Because the reality is, human beings answer things differently, and some might be more right than others, right? So
yeah. Well, Caitlin, let's jump to you and talk about some of the, we sort of started down that road, but let's talk about some of the potential pitfalls with the use of AI. And you can address that in terms of being a lawyer. You're right in the middle of your law practice and your law career. You stand to be impacted greatly by AI and sort of the future of what it is. So talk to us for a little bit, if you would, about the pitfalls that you see and what worries you about the use of AI.
Well, when we think about AI, that's a very broad concept. So let's say we're talking about ChatGPT, which is something that you've mentioned earlier on. And so ChatGPT isn't a research database. Let's make that clear. It is a large language learning model. So what it knows is it's scoured the internet, it knows all these sources, but then it looks at that data and then predicts what sort of words would come next. So when you ask ChatGPT a question, it may not necessarily be correct. I've asked ChatGPT simple questions that I was trying to figure out the answer on research, like, what is the authority for the principle that a trust is a separate legal entity for federal income tax purposes? And the ChatGPT is able to come back and give a nice paragraph and then cite to section 641 of the code. And when I get that response, I have to say, okay, well, I need to go make sure that that is actually correct. So go to section 641, is that right? And the reason why you should do that is because of the hallucinations that Kara mentioned. And when ChatGPT hallucinates, what it's doing is it's sort of just guessing based on what the language it's seen that's available and what certain authorities look like. It's guessing to just sort of fill gaps if it's not able to get an answer. And if you could pull up the hallucination slide. So here is an example where you ask ChatGPT, what are the major cases discussing the presumption of correctness? And if you're able to see the slide, there's 4 different cases provided. They all have citations, United States v. Leffall, 282 US 591. That looks like a real Supreme Court case, and you look through the others, they've got an explanation of what the cases hold. But then it turns out that United States v. Leffall and United States v. Anson are not real cases. You look up that citation, you get no result in any US reporter, even though it seems very authentic. So you definitely need to be double checking the work that ChatGPT is giving you, because there's no basis for the authenticity of it. And to take this further, I was on a panel a month ago where I said, gee, I wonder what would happen if someone was going to cite to one of these hallucinations of these fake case citations in a filing. And reality does not disappoint, because within the span of only a month, someone has already done this. It's a case in the Southern District of New York. We have the docket number and the affidavit from the attorney in the slide, and he's responding to an order to show cause why he should not be sanctioned, because he has cited 2 cases that don't exist. How this came up is opposing counsel was looking through the brief and saying, I'm not able to find these cases. The court's clerk looks for them. They can't find the cases either. And so he is ordered by the court to provide copies of these cases. How it becomes worse is that this attorney is trying to find the cases. He's not able to find them on a reporter. He goes back to his friend ChatGPT. What does ChatGPT do? ChatGPT is able to actually give him copies of these cases. They turn out they're about 5 pages long. They look for normal intents and purposes like a case. They have the sentence and paragraph structure of a case, saying that the decision below is affirmed or reversed. If you read it more carefully, you'll understand that the facts don't quite make sense, because we'll be talking about a Chinese-based entity that files for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in China, and then talking about the violation of the automatic stay for the Chinese entity. So that's strange. So the attorney took those cases, he filed them with the court, and then the court came back and said, these are not real cases. So now the attorney's dealing with a motion or an order to show cause why he should not be sanctioned because of the false information that he has provided to the court. So there's certainly a lot of pitfalls for the unwary with ChatGPT, and no guarantee that it's actually going to give you a right and correct answer.
So to stay on that topic for a second, it seems like you can't use ChatGPT or any other chatbot without proper safeguards. What are those safeguards, and are those safeguards imposed by a body that is larger than a law firm? Are they imposed by a law firm? What do we need to do to prevent that type of a situation?
Yeah, so one thing that's important, why I don't think that AI is going to replace humans entirely is the judgment of human beings as attorneys, and just looking at something and being like, does this case make sense? Is this right? And so there's a few different categories when we're thinking about AI. There's ChatGPT, which has these problems. Harvey, that you mentioned, is more of a database service, so less likely to hallucinate, and that's very helpful. But going back to ChatGPT, ALAS, the Attorneys Liability Assurance Society, has issued guidance that firms should prohibit the use of ChatGPT for substantive client legal work. And that's because of the difficulty in understanding the accuracy of the information, but then also just going to the model rules of professional conduct and how there could be various violations of the model rules for competence, confidentiality, and other duties when the attorney is discussing with their client what the form of the representation would be.
So we will need to have some of the guardrails around the use. It'll be interesting to see as it continues on. Mindy, I want to turn to you for 1 second, just so we can round out our whole kind of intro here. We've talked so far about legal industry, we've talked about tax, but I wanted to come to you and ask you a question on tax administration. AI at some point is going to be used in tax administration. What do you think it means for the future of tax administration, tax administrators? Will it be the magic pill that makes it all better?
Yeah, as I was listening to Caitlin's story of the unfortunate reliance on ChatGPT by an attorney, I was thinking about a paper a student of mine has done. So the IRS has a tool on their website for public use called the Interactive Tax Assistant, right? So you want to know whether a certain expense is deductible, you can, the tool will ask you a set of questions and you provide some answers, and then the tool will spit out, this is deductible or it's not deductible, yes or no. So my student reverse engineered that algorithm that asks those questions and provides answers, and then he plugged that into ChatGPT, and he did it a couple of times. And what he got was that ChatGPT provides the exact same answer as the Interactive Tax Assistant. And moreover, it provided a better answer because it showed the thought process, not thought, but the steps along the way. So whereas the IRS tool just gives you a straight up yes or no answer, that ChatGPT allowed you to better understand what was going on. So that raises a lot of questions, I think, about how the IRS could or should be and is using AI. So the Interactive Tax Assistant is a form of AI, right? It's an algorithm that's used to interact with people. Is it worth it for the IRS to invest in these types of tools if generally available internet OpenAI can provide the same answers? So that's one anecdotal one anecdote on this, but more generally, of course, I think tax administration there are a lot of questions, and to go to Caitlin's last point, your last question about guardrail. So the IRS is obviously using AI already. They've said in audit and selection of cases and processing data provided by taxpayers. We, as taxpayers, as the public, as citizens, we know very, very little about the tools the IRS is using, its selection methods, and that's on purpose, right? You wouldn't want to necessarily give people who are inclined to manipulate the system real visibility into how the IRS goes about finding taxpayers to audit. But at the same time, that means that we as citizens, as taxpayers, don't have any, we don't understand the oversight process over how the IRS makes these decisions, how it's training its algorithms. So like, as we've been discussing, these algorithms are not without risks. And we as the public don't have any understanding of that. And there have been, and I think you've discussed this perhaps on other of your webinars, certainly questions raised about bias in the IRS audit selection process, and as is generally known, algorithm AI, because it takes all the data from the web and because it's based on historical data, it is prone to incorporating existing biases and sometimes exacerbating them, and so we don't have good visibility into that either. So AI is obviously an important tool for tax administrators. We go to the efficiency point and the point about how much time practitioners and tax administrators also spend just collecting data and inputting data and cleaning data. That's certainly true for the IRS. So if we think about the need for more people and doing operating more efficiently, then AI is an important tool. But incorporating some guidelines and oversight over that process is going to be important. And there I put in a plug for a request for comments from a division of the Department of Commerce for regulating AI generally, and so I think it's important for the tax community to think about providing comments for what kind of regulations over the IRS's use of AI are important.
Yeah, and I think that point is important, because if the IRS is making determinations that are affecting whether you're audited, what your tax liability is, what outcome should be made with respect to your case, and if it's using AI, that's this black box, so you're not really sure of how those determinations are made. One example is the reasonable cause assistant, which was wrong in many cases, and when you're not getting penalties abated when they should have been, that could be a deleterious effect.
Yeah, I think those are great points, because that's what's going to lead to a lot of these verticalized AI, ChatGPT like models, because you're right. I mean, people are looking for transparency. They want to understand the logic, like Mindy and Caitlin, you pointed out, and that allows for verticalized models that are geared towards essentially giving tax practitioners, or whatever the content or the subject is going to be the future of tax, I think. And when you look at, I think Bloomberg just put out their projections on what just the generative AI revenues will be. I think by 2032, they said, was 1.3 trillion in generative AI revenues. That apparently in about 9 years. And when you look at the top 10 industries in terms of revenues today in 2023, the largest one is the hospital industry of 1.4 trillion. So if you think about it, our top 10 industries are, range between 1.2 to 1.4 trillion today in 2023, and the projections are that generative AI alone, that just narrow piece of AI alone, in 9 years, maybe faster, is going to essentially, that industry is going to produce 1.3 trillion in revenues. So this is sort of an avalanche that's hitting us, and the guardrails point, Kara, and what everyone's making is just critical. The transparency point is critical, and we'll see a lot of spawning up of these verticalized language models, the generative AI models, I think.
Yeah. Well, and there's several of you have mentioned the issue of privacy, which I think is a big one, and a point that we should talk about. There's a question on privacy of the information that is being entered into the databases, and where is that going and how is it being used? And so whether that's the IRS having access to a lot of confidential taxpayer information, or whether that's a law firm that is inputting client information, what are the concerns about privacy, and are they real, and how can we overcome them? I'll open that up to the group for whoever would like to take it first.
So ChatGPT, other LLMs or large language learning models, meaning they learn based on the information that they're provided. So if you go and put info into ChatGPT, it's going to take your prompt and put it into its learning model. And another thing to keep in mind is that the output you get from ChatGPT is only as good as the prompt, as Mindy mentioned. So if you get more detailed with your factual circumstances, that will help you to get a better result. So when you put that into ChatGPT, there's no guarantee that that information won't be shared by ChatGPT in response to some other user's inquiry. So using ChatGPT for like substantive client questions, to sort of like a fact finding, what's the result that should be reached from these factual circumstances, that can violate the privilege of requirements of attorney-client privilege. And that's why ALAS said that it currently violates Rule 1.6 for confidentiality.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll add. So I think that raises another important point. So Carrie, you talked about this PwC venture and the large investment it's making into its own kind of OpenAI app that would be available only within PwC. In part, I think that addresses the privacy concerns, right? That information. So if it's only a PwC accessible database, then you have less privacy concerns. But I think that raises a kind of long-term question about where the profession is going, because if only the firms that have the ability to build their own internal OpenAI, not OpenAI, essentially are able to fully utilize this technology, what does that mean for how smaller law firms or accounting firms may be able to compete in this space if there's a wealth of data available, but only those who have the ability to make large investments into creating those guardrails can access it. What does that mean for how the profession develops?
And I'll note that with these large language learning models, that there's different options that you can turn off the learning made by the model so that it is not taking the prompt information that you provided and then spitting that out to someone else. The downside is that then it's not learning off new information. So it's like a set database as of a certain date and isn't going to be learning in response to its interactions with users.
Yeah, I think, Mindy, to your point, I mentor a small startup that started with 5 people that is just focused on GPT technology, transformer technology. Today, they have about 40 or so people in their practice. So it's not a huge investment, right? It's not that much comparatively. And they happen to be selected as one of the, whatever, I think 100 startups by Microsoft in this space for out of 25,000 startups that they looked at, because they had, I guess, perfected their transformer GPT, what they were doing. And they're not in the tax space, they're in the finance, accounts payable, procurement space. But I really think, and I'm not a technology person by background, but looking at how this, I think it's going to take a lot less. Just again, I think I was actually surprised that with such few people, they were able to develop the language model, because I think there's this whole OpenAI business and they can essentially borrow from the world and just keep their piece private, but they have access to everything, allows you I think with much smaller investments than I think, to do a lot. It's just my guess, just from this one thing that I've seen that I've been following for the last 3 years. So because it's actually all about the data, right? Because if they don't have the data, I think the winners will all be the ones that have the data.
It's interesting, and I hope that it does not turn to be an impediment for smaller firms that are in practice. Because when I thought about this last night, it was like the reason that Tax Analyst was started in many ways was that large firms were gathering all of the IRS guidance, and they had that working law, and that gave them a leg up. And so it would be a shame to see a technology that should be a solution across the board and offer other things sort of be benefit the larger firms more than the smaller firms. So it'll be an interesting thing to watch. And I do hope, Sharda, that you're correct, that this won't take such a huge startup, and that it will be accessible and available to the extent that it is beneficial across the board. One thing we haven't talked about that has certainly been discussed widely is that there's a real possibility that AI can replace some or most of first year, second year associate work. Do you think that, and I'll again open this up to the group, do you think that that is real? What types of tasks would be eliminated? And then, Mindy, I may follow up with you on what does this mean then for law schools and law courses, and how are we going to better train associates to come in and be able to do what might currently be third-year work? So, Caitlin, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I would put it as there's an analogy that AI or ChatGPT is just like other technologies that have been created, such as the use of a calculator. And people would say that, oh gosh, a calculator is going to get rid of the need to do math. And, perhaps that's true, but is that actually problematic? So the tasks that AI can do are going to be more redundant, repetitive tasks, such as doing legal research, drafting form documents, drafting like deposition outlines or something. But as I mentioned earlier, there's still going to need to be human judgment overseeing it and taking that output and properly melding it to the result that you should have for legal work product. So when we think about young attorneys going forward, I think that they would need to just be instructed on how to use this technology to help them, and sort of like learning that you need to use a calculator, that these are the outputs you get from AI, and here's are the things you need to be looking for. Here's how you get a good product from AI, and this is how you can be a more valuable attorney as compared to having to churn out those redundant tasks yourself.
So in some ways, it's like learning a new software tool. So you come in as a new lawyer, you learn how to use, Lexis, Westlaw. If you're in tax, you learn how to use Checkpoint and those other tools. In some ways, it's maybe learning to use yet another tool that enables you to better practice. That's interesting. Mindy, I'm curious from a law professor perspective, how is this going to change your world?
Yeah, it's a couple of years ago, probably at least 4 years ago already, I went to pay a visit to EY, and with one of the business school professors, and they were talking about how, and this was before ChatGPT and OpenAI already. They were talking about how the skills that are needed from the first year staffers are not the same as the ones that they needed 10 years ago, because so much of what junior staffers did 10 years ago is already automated. And so one way to look at it is, the junior, whether they're associates or staffs in an accounting firm, are not getting the training that they needed. But another way to look at it is they're expected to jump in at a higher level, whereas before, maybe a first year could sit in a back office and just be inputting data or doing research and drafting memos. Now they're going to be asked to interact with clients at a much earlier date, and also to use their own judgment, because the human element of judgment is so much more important. And so I think this is not a new phenomenon, but again, like with a lot of ChatGPT, it's making us realize or accelerating these changes. So really, the sensitivity to those issues is why I started this course in AI and tax, because I wanted to make sure that our students were prepared for these changes in the workforce, and thinking about how to best utilize all of the available tools in their practice. And for many people, I think, coming out of law school, this represents a great opportunity for them they will most likely be the most knowledgeable person about many of these tools that in whatever firm they're going to. And so being fully aware of the tools that are available, and thinking even before they get to their new jobs about how these tools can be utilized to make a practice more efficient, and also the risks and challenges, I think gives them a leg up. I'll say in general, law schools are not known for being innovative and incorporating new technologies into the teaching, but I do think it's, some of the stats are that like 50% of lawyers' work will be made redundant by generative AI, and so I think it behooves that everyone, lawyer people in practice and professors and students also to think about how their skills and knowledge that they're obtaining, and even in practice as you continue to grow in your practice, how to incorporate the tools that are available and that are becoming more available every day to best serve your clients and advance your careers.
We've had a couple of interesting audience questions come in. One that I actually don't know the answer to. This may be a very quick one and you all may or may not. Is there a tax-specific large language model? Caitlin, I'm kind of looking on my screen. I'm sort of looking in your direction to see if you had ever come across anything that was very specific to tax.
Mindy, did you mention BlueJ has something, and then that's
yeah,
tax specific? Okay.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's right.
So BlueJ is a database of tax authorities, and it applies, I guess that would be large language modeling. So it poses questions or it allows a user to pose natural language questions, or it prompts the user with natural language questions to guide the user towards an answer based on that database.
Right. No, we've had answer-based solutions for quite some time, where whether you could go to Answer Connect, right, and put in an answer and get something out. How different is what say BlueJ is doing, or other AI tools? How much different is it than what we have historically been doing of being able to go and use natural language to ask a question?
So I think it is a leap in terms of, right, so if you're posing, so the kind of question you would traditionally pose is to look for a case, right? So you'd put in a term or you'd put in a couple of words and it would find cases on point. And what BlueJ is trying to do is give you an answer to a legal question. And so it's taking all the cases and other authorities, and it's saying, based on your facts, here is an answer. And I think that is a real leap in terms of the interaction with the software. I do think that I just got an email today from Westlaw saying that it was going to be incorporating AI into its tool, and so I think we should expect that all of kind of the tax databases that we commonly use will be incorporating the OpenAI type tools to enhance users' ability to search within their databases.
I think the algorithms for actual search and the transformer technology are not the hard part, because it's so, I think it's going to become a lot more commonplace. And we use like Excel. It's the data and how it's configured, where it is, the access to the data. Because, you know, from what these startup guys teach me is they can basically take their transformer, the GPT type of tool that they've verticalized to one domain to other domains very easily. Because they don't have the data for the other domain, but they have the concept of how this thing is supposed to search and pull or whatever else already there. That's sort of what is the sense I get. So we'll see what happens.
And one point that I don't know that we've really mentioned is that ChatGPT can write also. So if you put in a prompt and it can write you like a nice multi-page article or blurb about something, law students or college students are getting in trouble for using it for essays. And it's able to give such like a nice, well-written prompt because of the amount of language and writing style that it's already familiar with. So while ALAS is saying that you shouldn't use it for substantive client work, you could still use it for marketing purposes and say, okay, like describe this news event, describe my expertise, and you feed it in a bunch of data points and can provide a nice product that way.
I'll tell you, I was struck by a CNN interview. This was probably February or so. We had a philosophy professor from some university that was talking about this stuff, and he was being interviewed. And he was talking about this paper that his student had written on philosophy, and apparently this was a very complex philosophy question that he'd asked. I don't know if anyone remembers the thing. And he was talking about how beautifully and thoughtful it was, how deep it was, and everything else. And the interviewers were asking him, like, so how'd you figure out that this was not the student? He said, well, I've taught for so many years. I've never had something as good as this ever before. And I thought there's something going on here. So he basically fed the answer back to ChatGPT and asked it. So because then they asked him, how did you figure out was that, before asking the student, ChatGPT, did you write this? And ChatGPT said 99.9% confidence, I wrote this thing. So anyway, so the point is, Caitlin, to your point, it writes good stuff, and I've seen it. It's just incredible.
I mean, I think that is the big difference, is what we used to get. You used to be able to ask an answer or ask a question, and you would get, like the hierarchy down from, you've got the code section, and then you could drill down and you could go to something else, or you start with topic and you drill in and you drill in and you drill in, and maybe you find the right answer. And here you can have a paragraph that is neatly and tidily explaining it. It's fascinating. Well, I'm going to see if we can get to one other question. Well, actually, I may even get to two other questions that have come in. One we talked about briefly, and I'm not sure that we have a solid answer to, but there's definitely copyright questions surrounding the output of ChatGPT. What are your thoughts on whether, can you use what comes from ChatGPT, and are we going to see copyright challenges to this?
I mean, that's an interesting question, because I think, I'm a tax professional, not an IP attorney. I think that an AI, a non-human, cannot be a creator, a writer of a legal product, a written product. So if AI isn't the writer or the creator of it, who is? Is it you, because you use such a great prompt that made it so that AI plopped out this product? So I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I also think, to the point about there's a reliance point, right? You never want to rely on the answer ChatGPT gives you. You always want to make sure to review it, and also to make it yours. And so if you're doing that, perhaps the copyright issues become less acute. If it's not a ChatGPT product, but simply an aid. And helping you get where you want to go.
I mean, I think it's interesting, and in my world of reporters, if you took something from ChatGPT and you tried to publish it, that would be plagiarism, even if no one has asserted copyright to it, or there's not a question. I think that you have to. I think, Mindy, you're right. You have to be able to make it your own.
I'll tell you that the one thing that's happening that ChatGPT is learning is video to text. And there is gazillion more data and information in video than there exists in text that it's absorbed already. And it's in the process. The reason they're doing it is because they're going to get a lot more data. So you can talk about the richness of whatever it gets from all these people that have put videos out there on YouTube and every place else. And the fact that it's going to basically have that all in text to, I guess, create new new stuff from is going to be interesting.
Yeah,
Huge. It's like a gazillion X what we have.
It's a brave new world of what we're going to be encountering in probably the very short term. Well, I can't thank you guys enough. This was a very fun conversation. I think that we could have kept going. We had a bunch of really good audience questions. I think we tried to answer most of them. But thank you. This was informative and educational, and I really appreciate your time. And to everyone watching, I hope you have a great rest of your day and that you enjoyed our conversation about AI as much as I did. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.